Hello my bookish friends, I hope you're all getting ready for your 2021 reads. What I thought I'd do in this video is just take you through 12 books that I absolutely will be reading this year. I will read more than 12 books, of course, but I always set the target of 12 in particular, which I'm guaranteeing myself to read. Some of them are contemporary classics, many of them are 19th century classics, some I've already read and others I haven't. The ones I have already read have been a while ago and I just want to rediscover myself within the pages of those great novels. So, without further ado, let us sally on forth, shall we? So first up on my list is The Mayor of Casterbridge. Can you see that there? By Thomas Hardy. Now, if you've never read Thomas Hardy, I heartily recommend that you pick at least one book this year written by Hardy. He is a wizard at words. His ability to conjure atmosphere and to describe scenery is second to none. He's just got this deft touch with the pen, which is a delight to get into. Now, the Mayor of Casterbridge is a man called Michael Trenchard, and we first find him in the book under the influence of alcohol, rumfirmity to be more specific. He sells his wife and daughter, can you believe? That's Sarah and the daughter's Elizabeth Jane, I think it is. He sells them to a sailor called Newsom. Now 21 years later, Sarah and Elizabeth Jane come back and they find that Michael is a mayor in Casterbridge. Hence the title, The Mayor of Casterbridge. So what's going to happen? Will he make it up to them? In fact, he will try to. And what is going to be the relationship between Michael and Newsom, the one that he sold them to? And how about Elizabeth Jane? Does she know that Michael is her real father? And what will society do and react? Well, I can't wait to have a look into this and find out. I had a brief start with this, and what's very interesting in the first chapter is his use of the colour brown, would you believe? Because he's painting a backdrop before the main story, it's almost like he paints the whole thing in sepia colours. Long before video footage that we use today describes olden days in sepia. So that's number one. Up next, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. It's sort of a book that needs no introduction. However, I have not got round to reading it. To Kill a Mockingbird has the very famous character Atticus Finch, a lawyer that tries to teach his children while the Mockingbird, a black man accused of raping a white girl, goes to trial. And the story itself forces a society that is quite ignorant, particularly through a couple of the characters we're shown that. It's ignorant and stubborn in its views towards race and people of colour, and it's set right back in the 1930s, and I hope to read it with the 1930s in mind. I might do a little bit of background research in that, race relations and attitudes in the south of America, before I get into this book, but I'm really looking forward to reading this. And the reason it's called To Kill a Mockingbird, there's a quote in the book, it's cited on the back here. Shoot all the blue jays you want, if you can hit them. But remember, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. So that's where the phrase comes from, to kill a mockingbird. So, have you read it? If you have, put in the comments your thoughts. And if you haven't read it, well, do you intend to read it this year? Do you think it might be a good one for you to put on your list? Again, make a comment. Let's get a chat going around the classic literature. Next up is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I think you can see by the dog-eared nature of this book that I've read this before. A fabulous book. Although, one thing I will say, what is that picture about? I mean, it looks like a story about a crash test dummy and a piece of licorice, doesn't it? I really don't understand. I know Wordsworth classics are cheap to allow people to read them, but I mean, they've really lost their way in the art department with that one, haven't they? Anyway, the story itself is phenomenal. If you like the psyche of characters, if you like psychological trauma, and I don't mean thrillers or suspense, just the engaging with a human mind, Dostoevsky is a fabulous author. But this one follows the life of a Russian student called Raskolnikov, and you find him sort of in poverty in a little garret room at the beginning, and he has the idea of committing a crime, and he goes through it over and over in his head, and eventually he commits a crime, and then we follow the fallout. How does a person deal with committing a crime? How does it make them feel amongst the society that they're in? If it's to do with a crime that's linked to their principles, can the principles ever justify a criminal act? But you also see the actions of others, and it makes you start thinking about the actual title, Crime and Punishment. There is a crime, and what is the punishment? But everyone else's lives in this are governed by some kind of action and some kind of fallout for themselves or those around them. It's a really deep exploration of how our worldview and how our actions affect us, and that nothing in life can carry on without being touched by a past act. So this book, I will read this in January, and I will do a full review. I've just given you a light one there. A full review of some of the main themes on this channel. So subscribe and ring the bell if you really are interested in digging deep into literature, not just getting the rough story. So number 3 was Crime and Punishment. Moving on, Anna Karenina. There you go, a lovely picture of a lady standing by a train. That says it all, doesn't it? It's a better picture than the Crime and Punishment one, I will say that. Anna Karenina has one of the famous opening lines in literature where it says that every happy family is the same or similar, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own particular way, which I think is a fabulous way to open a book. Anna Karenina was also Tolstoy's first real endeavour to get into the novel, as it were, and it weighs in at a good 800 pages. So once I've finished with it, I can use it to jack up the car to change tyres. What Tolstoy, he's very good at this, but in Karenina, he really looks at the coarse power of society being able to grind someone down, to make them succumb to it. It looks at death and at destiny, at human relationships, and like a lot of Russian literature, it looks at the contradictions in living. So I'm really looking forward to going through Anna Karenina. And if you're interested in a read-along with me for any of these books, I'm going to leave my Instagram details in the description below. DM me and tell me whether you're interested in reading along with any one of these books, or if that would benefit you or you'd enjoy that, then let me know on Instagram or in the comments below. And leave your Instagram handle, because it's nice for other bookish people to find you on Instagram. So I have no objection to you leaving a link to your Instagram down here, or your YouTube channel for that matter. Okay, so that was the last one. Anna Karenina, Leo Tolstoy. Next up is Perfume by Patrick Suskind. I hope you can see that there. Lots of little perfume bottles. Don't they look delicious? I've been itching to read this book because it's got such a brilliant sounding plot. And also it's well renowned for being a great work. So I'm looking forward to digging in. The plot itself is of a young boy that's left on the streets of, I think it's 17th century Paris. And he grows up and finds that he has a unique gift. And you can guess what the gift is by perfume. He's got an incredible sense of smell, better than anybody else's. And so he makes his way in the world and a name for himself as a perfumier. And he can capture any scent except for one. The scent of a young girl. Now, I don't know who that young girl is, but he wants to capture this scent. And he is going to go to any lengths possible to capture it. Now, isn't that a great idea for a plot? I mean, I'm intrigued by that. I don't know if you've read Perfume, or have you ever heard of Perfume before? By that, I don't mean do you wear it. Have you ever read of the book Perfume before? I'm really itching to find out where Patrick Suskind is going to take this. Has he got an angle that he's trying to analyse? Most great works of literature have some hypothesis. Is the author exploring an idea through story? Can't wait to really engage with this. It's got all the ingredients of being a gripping read, and actually, it's not the largest book. What is it? 295 pages. However, if you look at the font's quite large. So it's not really 300 pages. I'm looking forward to getting into this. Okay, this next author is a bit of an acquired taste. If you read the classics, you'll see quite a lot of videos on YouTube about books, 5 classic books to get you into classic literature. But you may want to move on to intermediate to more advanced classics, which really tussle with your brain. They really require you to be patient, to read carefully, and to think, and to really try and get the author's mindset, his perception of the world or her perception of the world, and then see what argument they're bringing to you, their observations or conclusions about life, and then you can sort of, tangle with them, tussle with them, debate with them. Joseph Conrad is the author I'm talking about. English is his 3rd language, and he learned most of his language by studying literature. So he's got a very literary way of writing. He's not the easiest, but he's fascinating. I tell you, there's one thing that encompasses Conrad's work: solitude. Even if a person is surrounded by others, the solitude that a human being can feel. And he never seems to stop exploring that in his books. I've read a number of his books. I have not read Victory, which I'm looking forward to. Now, the story of Victory, best I can do is read the back of this book. Okay? It says, set in the exotic islands of the Malay archipelago, Conrad's tale of betrayal and isolation, there you have it, isolation, solitude, has at its heart a celebration of loyalty and the sublime power of love. When Axel Haste, a loner, elopes with a young girl whom he barely knows, the jealousies and suspicions of the local community simmer like the volcano that overshadows them. Determined to prevent Haste and Lena from enjoying whatever peace their ill-matched union might bring, Schomburg, a hotel keeper with his own designs on Lena, dispatches plain Mr. Jones and his 2 henchmen to the mysterious island of Sambaran, charged with a mission that will leave treachery, murder, and suicide in its wake. Does that sound good? Sounds good to me. But I'm not expecting this to be an Alexandre Dumas, Three Musketeers swashbuckling adventure. From my experience with Conrad, it will plod, but it will be provoking. Victory by Joseph Conrad. Heathcliff. Oh, Heathcliff. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Cathy and Heathcliff, one of the classic Gothic romantic couples in literature. Kate Bush's song really ruined it all for me. She really messed up a whole book. It was a long, long time ago that I read this book. 15, maybe more years. And I was talking to my wife about this. I couldn't really remember the plot. I've never watched one of the films. And I thought, I've really got to go back to that. And what's inspired me is I read Anne Bronte's Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which is amazing, by the way. It made me want to go back to Emily and Charlotte to see the different styles of writing and the different ways they see the world, because they obviously grew up together and they had similar jobs to one another, and yet they draw different conclusions to each other. So I'm looking forward to that. Cathy and Heathcliff, of course, separated cruelly when they're young. Cathy is sort of obsessed with Heathcliff. Heathcliff is not the greatest of guys, and I remember sort of slapping my head several times when I read it last time, but I can't remember why. Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte. Are you ready to be absolutely gobsmacked? The next book that's just come out of my pile is Jane Eyre. Gorgeous signature edition by Barnes & Noble. Quite an old one, actually, but love it. I have never read Jane Eyre. I can't tell you why. I sort of came to the conclusion that it was because everyone raved about it, and so I obstinately dug my heels in and wouldn't read it. But that can't be true, because I read Pride and Prejudice and all of Austen's works, So why I've never read Jane Eyre, I just don't know. So I'm really looking forward to this and getting to grips with its story, with the love interest that's inside there that I know is there. Mr. Rochester, which makes a lot of people swoon. So there's Mr. Rochester, Jane Eyre, the governess, and that cracker's wife in the attic. I know that that's all in the book. But other than that, do you know, I really have little idea about what Jane Eyre is about. So I am very excited about reading this one this year. Please don't hate me for not having read it though already. I promise I will do it justice, and I will give you a full in-depth review of what I managed to pull out of the story and what I think of Jane Eyre's message. So that's the next one, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Up next is The Iliad by Homer. You have a look there, there's the Greeks all getting frantic in battle, peltasts and phalanxes and the like. The Iliad, of course, is part of the foundation of the great Western canon. Now, I'm an ardent fan of Shakespeare. I love the bard's work. And if you look at other videos on my channel, I do a lot in breaking down Shakespeare's speeches and giving overviews of plays. There is a huge amount of references to classical Greek literature too. And I want to read the Iliad, one, because it is a great epic poem, also because I want it to enhance my understanding of a lot of Shakespeare. I just think it would be handy to have. But I'm just really looking forward to reading a bit of classical literature. The Iliad. Up next is a work I have read before and absolutely adore. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Is it Dumas' best work? I couldn't say because I haven't read every single piece of his work, but of all those that I've read, The Count is the greatest. Better even than the D'Artagnan series and the Three Musketeers. Dumas, if you've never read him, is amazing at keeping you reading. I mean, the Three Musketeers, a swashbuckling novel, this does not disappoint. It follows the life of Edmond Dantes, who on his wedding day gets arrested and imprisoned in a fortress on an island. And he doesn't know what he's been accused of. He has no idea. And it follows his journey then. You see him in prison. He meets an old man who teaches him mathematics and logic and reason. And this book has escapes from prisons. It has treasure. It has highwaymen and bandits and grotesque stuff and love interests. Dark revenge. Edmond Dantes wants to escape prison and wreak revenge on those who put him there in the first place. The Count of Monte Cristo himself is one of the most enigmatic and beguiling characters and bewitching characters you will ever read about. Dumas had an absolute knack of writing characters with a personality that fills the room like a great fog. If you've read Three Musketeers, you'll know that Cardinal Richelieu, he doesn't appear much, but when D'Artagnan first meets him, Richelieu is quite an unnerving character. He's very menacing without raising his voice or anything. He's brilliant. Now the Count and the characters in this, yeah, they are absolutely magnetic. So if you have not read The Count of Monte Cristo, of all the 12, I really recommend this one in your TBR. And if you want to do a buddy read along, same thing applies. Just come and tell me on my DM me on Instagram or leave a comment down below and we'll sort that out, because this is a book. It's about 900 pages. There is a section in the middle about 10 chapters to 12 chapters long, which is a bit of a drag, but that's because it's the turning point. It's sort of the fulcrum of the story. You've got to move forward in time, and there's a lot of backstory for other people to be put in. And no, he didn't do it because he was writing serially. That's not the reason. Every word is important in this book. But apart from that little section, the whole thing is an absolute romp of a read. So grab hold of this if you can. Okay. Count of Monte Cristo. Coming up next is Stendhal's Scarlet and Black. Or The Red and the Black, it may be called, depending on which book you get. Now, Stendhal is sort of the granddaddy of psychological writing. Tolstoy regarded Stendhal as the most influential writer of his time. Nietzsche was delighted when he came across Stendhal. Dostoevsky was influenced by Stendhal. Literarily, there's hardly a more highly praised author. But I'll ask you a question. Have you read any Stendhal? And if you have, which one? So the two main works of his that often get mentioned are The Scarlet and the Black and The Charterhouse of Parma, which I also have. However, I want to read this one. I'll read from the back what it's about, okay? It says, "To us, as to Stendhal, Scarlet and Black is a clear reflection of the blue of the skies and the mire of the road below." That's a phrase from Margaret Shaw. A very nice phrase, isn't it? The blue of the skies and the mire of the road, the contrasting worlds. It mirrors rather than paints mobile and revealing glimpses of life as it was whiled away in the climate of fear and greedy drawing room conformity that followed Waterloo. Julian Sorel, or Sorel, the novel's restless, ambitious hero, rebels against his circumstances and wills himself to make something of his life by adopting a code of hypocrisy. On the road to the surprising crime he commits, out of passion, principle, or insanity, he turns into Stendhal's greatest and most completely human creation. I'm looking forward to reading this. Stendhal is another one of those that is going to be a little more taxing, more in the line of Conrad, but it's to help us get to grips with the realism of the human nature. For instance, Flaubert, who wrote Madame Bovary, and Émile Zola, both heavily influenced by Stendhal. So this is a book I am itching to get down to be quite honest. And I can't wait to be scribbling all over it with my pen and pencil. So, The Scarlet and the Black by Stendhal. And that brings us to the final book of the 12 that I will be reading this year for definite. It's another book that I have read before, but you know, I really want to get lost in its pages again. It's been such a while that I want to go and find myself in the back alley of a street in London and see whether my personality has changed and what my thoughts are now. The book, Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Now, too easily people think of this as a children's book because it's been adapted for the Christmas films. Please sir, can I have some more? And of course it's got brilliant caricatures in there like Fagin and the Artful Dodger, etc. But this book was so influential as a piece of writing. Queen Victoria read this book and asked whether children really lived like that in London. It made the biggest change or societal reform for the welfare of children, more change than anything else has ever done. I mean, what an accolade to have as an author. Some people are put off by Dickens because they think he's wordy. Do you know what? If you've never read Dickens, he's hilarious. He's a marvel. You will love the way he characterises people. And then there are others who criticise him, saying that his characters are all caricatures, they're grotesques. Now, yeah, okay, I can accept that to a degree. Not all of them. In Bleak House, you don't have that many. In Tale of Two Cities, you only have one, and that's Jerry Cruncher. Dickens did have a knack at sort of characterising people, or caricaturing people. And there's a reason he did. It wasn't because he was trying to. The reason he could caricature a person was because he was one of the best, most observant and insightful commentators on human nature that has ever walked the planet. He was that acutely aware of the small minutiae that makes up an individual, and his ability to capture it with words made that person jump out so clearly and universally that all of us can say, I know someone like that. And that then makes them a caricature, a stereotype of an individual. Dickens was able to do it, and the amount of times he does it, including in Oliver Twist, is a demonstration of his just unique power to observe beyond what most people could do. Dickens has been called the Shakespeare of the novel. Now, Oliver Twist is actually a great place to start if you're getting into Dickens. I really want to go back to this because it's almost a book that's fallen out of favour. It's a book that everyone thinks they know. But at that width, can I ask you, if you've never read the book, do you know what's in all of that? And of course, Dickens is never just telling a story. He always has an angle. And so why didn't you engage with it? Why don't you judge society today by what you find in this and see whether much has changed? Or how continuous the human condition always is? So, the last of my books, Oliver Twist. Let me know in the bottom what you're reading this year. I'd really like to know. If there's any crossover and you've got things that you are going to read this year, let me know, because if you've got a YouTube channel or Instagram, I will follow you. Okay? So just let me know what you're up to. And if you've read any of these books, tell me what you think beforehand. One thing else, if you would like me to review any one particular of these books first or second, and deeply, and try and suck out the themes and to get into a debate with the book itself and do a video on that, because I like to make videos that are deeper, not just covering the story. Tell me which one you would like me to do, and by a majority vote, even if that majority is one person, I will obey. All I will say is for January, it will be Crime and Punishment, because someone who is already a subscriber has asked me to do Crime and Punishment. So that will be January, but what book would you like me to do after that? If you love the classics, classic literature, and want to go deep into them and into Shakespeare, subscribe and dingling the bell so that you never miss another episode of Tristan and the Classics. I wish you all the best in your reading.